A week ago, Donald Trump went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and it did not go too well for him. Well, now, we have JD Vance going on the same podcast, and it went just about as good as you would expect. It was so bad, in fact, Joe Rogan called out JD Vance to his face as he attacked women. So in this video, we're gonna go over that clip, but first, I'd like to show you a few other moments from that podcast, because this was not the only embarrassing part for JD Vance. So first, let's take a look at JD Vance not seeming to know how vaccines are supposed to work.
I took the vax, and I haven't been boosted or anything, but the moment where I really started to get red pilled on the whole vax thing was the sickest that I've been in the last 15 years by far was when I took the vaccine. And I've had COVID at this point 5 times. I was in bed for 2 days. My heart was racing. I was like, the fact that we're not even allowed to talk about that, even, no like serious injury, but even the fact that we're not even allowed to talk about the fact that I was as sick as I've ever been for 2 days, and the worst COVID experience I had was like a sinus infection, I'm not really willing to trade that.
Yeah, that was really dumb. JD Vance said that he felt sick after the vaccine, which is kind of what happens when you get a vaccine. He also said that the symptoms when he actually got sick were not as bad as the vaccine. So because the vaccine was worse, that makes the vaccine bad. Now, I cannot tell if JD Vance is just an idiot or going along with the talking points, because yeah, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. Now, another insane thing that happened was Joe Rogan point blank saying that, hey, you shouldn't be prosecuted for going across state lines to get an abortion. And JD Vance had the audacity to say that he's never heard of that happening. Just take a look at this.
One of the issues is that men are making decisions for what women can and can't do.
I hear that.
And one of the more concerning aspects of this is, like, say if you live in a state like Texas where there's a limit to when you can get an abortion. I think it's like 6 weeks, which a lot of people think at that point in time you can't even tell whether or not you're pregnant, and this puts a lot of women in like very vulnerable positions. And then there's this thought that they could go to another state where it is legal and have an abortion, but they could be possibly prosecuted for that in their state. That's concerning to me, that we can make, if there's a place in the country where it's legal to have a medical procedure and you live in a state where it's not legal, that your state can decide what you can and can't do with your body, which is essentially based on a religious idea. And a lot of I'm not criticizing it one way or another, but I'm saying that a lot of what this choose life thing is about, that life is precious and life is sacred and life begins at the moment of conception. And some people agree with this, but other people disagree with this. And it seems to be a lot of it is based in religion. My concern is using that to dictate whether or not a person can legally travel to another state. I don't think the government should be monitoring where you travel or what you do when you travel, as long as that thing is legal. And I'm concerned with this idea that you could be prosecuted for it in your state for doing something that's legal somewhere else.
I don't like the idea, to be clear. I've not heard of this maybe as like a possibility, but not as something that actually exists in the law. But I've not heard of somebody being arrested, and I don't like the idea of arresting people for moving about the country.
I haven't heard of them doing it either. I've heard of the discussion.
I've heard as a threat.
Yes.
How can JD Vance be running for vice president and not know anything about this? I swear, whenever Trump or Vance are confronted with something that they just don't want to deal with, they default to saying that they know nothing about it. It's just so insane. But here's the even better part. Joe Rogan actually called out JD Vance to his face as he attacked women. Just take a look at this.
Like the concept in the zeitgeist is that abortion had always been, Roe v. Wade had always been the law of the land, and then all of a sudden that was taken away, and you have these religious men who are trying to dictate what women can and can't do with their bodies.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, again, I understand that. I understand the pushback against that. But I think you can go, like with so many other issues, you can go way too far about it, and it becomes trying to celebrate something that at the very best, if you grant, I think, every argument of the pro-choice side, it is a neutral thing, not something to be celebrated.
I think there's very few people that are celebrating that.
I think it's great that Joe Rogan finally called him out after he spoke so many lies. I saw a lot more of the podcast, and he let JD Vance just go on and on about some things that are straight up lies. But it's good that he was at least able to call him out on women's rights. rights. And I think it's because Joe Rogan knows that this issue kills him in the polls, so he's trying to sort of say, hey, maybe you shouldn't go that direction. But either way, it is proof that even Joe Rogan has enough common sense to see that abortion is healthcare, and that shouldn't be taken away. But here's the thing, if Trump and JD Vance win, they are going to do everything in their power to make a nationwide abortion ban. So if we want to prevent that, then the only way is to get out and vote in less than a week.